So for once, when I say that I'm going to try to not take too long with review, I actually mean it. Hey folks, my name is Jen. Today we are going to talk about what I read in November. So in the month of November I read 7 books. The first book that I ended up finishing in November was 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. So this starts out with Mrs. McGillicuddy. She is heading home on the train from doing some Christmas shopping when she witnesses through the windows of another passing train a man murdering a woman, and she tries to report this to people. No one seems to really believe her until she tells her dear friend Miss Marple, who actually believes her. Miss Marple has made it possible to be nearby while this is happening, but she can't rightly investigate as carefully as she would like to, so she ends up enlisting the assistance of a very capable young woman who's kind of a, what is it? If it's a girl that's a jack of all trades, is it a Jill? A Jill of all trades? Is that what the term is? I don't know. Basically, she's this very capable woman who comes in and helps people with whatever they need. Babysitting, house sitting, housekeeping, caring for others. She does it all, and she goes in to kind of delves into this mess in this big old manor house in the area to kind of investigate further the mystery of this mysterious woman whose body people are looking for. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This has some twists and turns, as is per usual with Agatha Christie's works. I really enjoyed this. Miss Marple is, of course, very clever. Lucy, the very capable young woman, is also very clever. I really enjoyed her introduction. I think she's a very interesting character. I wish there were more books about her because she's, like I said, just very a fascinating character. I actually liked a lot of the characters that were in this book, even when there were a couple that I despised greatly, but I thought they were all fairly interesting. Agatha Christie was also really good at writing really screwed up families, like families that have a lot of shit going on. They're very messy. Very good at like writing murder mysteries involving these fucked up family dynamics and stuff like that, which I always enjoy when she has that in one of her books. So enjoy that aspect of it. I have to say though, did not guess the murderer this time. There was one point in the book where I thought, is it this person? No, it can't be this person. And I totally fell instead for a couple of red herrings that were in here and totally did not. So, she got me again, the brilliant Dame Agatha. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a pretty cool read. I'm sure there's got to be some adaptation of it. I'm sure there's probably a David Suchet adaptation of it. So I imagine I will try to be, like, watching that fairly soon. I gave this 5 stars. Then I read another mystery, and that was The Haunted Murders by Seishi Yokomizo. This is a Hankaku, like, Japanese puzzle mystery, and this basically begins with a wedding, and unfortunately the night of the wedding there's a horrific murder and the very eccentric private detective Kosuke Kindaichi is brought in to investigate what happened exactly. So firstly, the writing style here was just, it was not exactly what I was expecting. It was a little odd. The story itself is being told not from the point of view of anyone who was a part of the case or anyone who was present at the case. The case itself took place in the winter of 1937, and this is looking at it several years later. In fact, I think it might be like a decade later. And this is a person who was kind of near the area at one time, but was not an active part of this investigation or mystery or anything. He basically just heard about it, and then decided, oh, I'm going to investigate this whole thing, and goes up many years later to kind of narrate the story and go into things, which, interesting concept, but I don't think it really translated that well, because we would be in the action, and then all of a sudden, anytime the narrator themselves kind of interjected and said, oh, and then, there's like a time jump, or they interjected some commentary or something like that, it just ended up like really pulling me out of the story overall. Just remembering that, oh wait, this is just right out of that time period, that narrative, and now we're back into present at this time. And it was a little jarring. It was not something that I was particularly fond of in that sense. There was also a little wording. There were like ways that certain things were phrased and certain humorous bits were handled that also felt a little weird, but in all honesty, that might not be like a writing, like an actual writing thing. That might just be the translation itself, where something just didn't quite come through as well due to how it was translated. That though, I was still really invested in this mystery. I really wanted to see how eccentric the investigator, Kendaichi, would be, how eccentric he could get, what he was like. I was very interested in how he would come to the right conclusion, what his investigative methods were, and everything. So basically any scene that had him in it was pretty much a delight. He was pretty brilliant, and it would be his like investigative style alone is what would make me want to pick up more out of this series, because he's very interesting. he's a weird dude, but quite brilliant. Also, I was totally off about the solution. I don't know if that's because I kept getting thrown off, because I potentially like misread clues, if there was something I missed potentially, or I'm just very dumb. But yeah, I was shocked by the solution. And I mean, I think that's like the sign of a really good mystery. Well, sometimes if you're shocked by the solution to a mystery, it's like, well, that's not really fair play, right? They should have left you a clue somewhere. But no, there were plenty of clues, I just didn't read them correctly. This was, yeah, it was just a very interesting mystery. I definitely want to check out more, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. The next book I read was The Ghost of Rose Hill by R.M. Romero. So this is a book, it's actually a book told in verse, and it is following Ilana, who is a biracial Jewish girl who has been sent to stay in Prague with her aunt, because her aunt is like a starving artist, basically, and Ilana's parents are very upset with how obsessed Ilana is with the violin and how much she wants to be a professional violinist. They, because of how hard they have worked, both of them, with immigrating to the US and trying to make a better life for themselves and for her, they very much want her to have a stable, highly successful job, like a doctor, a architect, whatever, basically. They want her to pick a different career than just being a starving artist. essentially. So they send her to Prague to stay with her aunt and realize what kind of life that you will have as a poverty-stricken person who's doing what you love, but still, you know, barely getting by. While she is there, Ilana finds a abandoned Jewish cemetery up on this hill behind her aunt's house, and she ends up taking it upon herself to clean it and try to breathe some life back into the place. And that's not, nope. And you know, try to fix it up for the people that, you know, are buried there. While she is there, she ends up encountering this ghost boy, and as her and the ghost boy become closer, Elena also encounters a very mysterious man with no shadow who is also very interested in Ilana and especially interested in the music that she produces on the violin. So this book was definitely very beautiful. Like the thought that went into this book, the overall like messaging behind this book, like about trying to be your own person, like, you know, respecting what your parents have done for you, but also at the same time, like, you're not their plaything. You get to make your own choices about your life. You get to pick what you want to do with your... They have chosen what to do with their lives. You have to choose what to do with your life. Be true to yourself. Like, you know, following your heart, making your own path in life. And also about, like, honoring the dead. This place, like I said, has been kind of abandoned. It's run down. Nobody's really caring for it. And she tries to, like, care for it because she feels like, well, somebody should. It's important. Somebody should care about this place. Somebody should care about the people who are buried here. And she feels like that's something that she needs to do and she wants to do. So I really liked all of the thoughts that went into this. This is also very beautifully written. There's a lot of lines in here. It's definitely a very quotable book. You can see my usual corners bent down. I know that will upset some people, but I'm sorry. It's my book, and this is how I keep track of quotes I like. Also, underlined, like, I know, that's another thing, but it's whatever. I marked things that, like, lines that particularly I thought were beautiful. Lines that really, like, were like, ooh, punches to the gut. Beautiful, like, thoughts. It's a very beautifully written book. The thought process behind it is very, like, I think very well done. You know, and like I said, very, very quotable lines. However, there's also just a couple of little issues with this book. The first one being probability. I know this is technically, I think, like a YA fantasy or supernatural, paranormal, I don't know what you would call it exactly. With the whole probability thing, I think the main character just kind of accepts the like paranormal stuff a little too easily. She's basically just like accepts without a doubt, oh, there's a ghost boy here and he is staring at me. Oh, and she barely has a reaction. You know, other things happen. She encounters the man with no shadow. Why doesn't he have a shadow? No reaction. She's not like, oh. You know, she's not like, well, that's weird. She's not like, what is he? Is he a ghost? She's not like, hey, he doesn't have a shadow. It's like Dracula or something. Like, what's happening with this? She doesn't really have any big reaction other than, oh, so he's paranormal too. Like, that's, and it's not even like a fearful reaction. It's nothing. She's so detached from things oftentimes. It's like she has some reactions when it has to do with other things, like her music, like her friends back home not messaging her all the time and stuff like that. She has big reactions about that, but when it comes to weird, like, people and weird things happening, she just has barely any reaction, or they're always favorable reactions, and the whole thing made her seem at times a little too detached, like there was something severely lacking in her, I don't want to say lacking in her personality, but it was just like she just is not surprised by anything, and it's like, okay, you're from, where are you from again? LA? No, Miami, excuse me. She's from Miami, and I have to think to myself, is Miami just teeming with ghosts? And we don't, like, no one talks about this? Like, what's happening there? And she's coming from a background of, like, yeah, her family has, like, little superstitious things, but her family is also seems to be pretty, logical-ish and centered on being, like, logical and serious, responsible adult and stuff like that. So it seems a little weird to have her be so detached from everything. And at the times when she has other reactions, it doesn't seem so much as detached. It also seems more childish, like she's not behaving in the way that you would think I think she's supposed to be like 16. Some of her reactions seem almost younger than that, like maybe like a 10 or 11-year-old would have, as opposed to a teenager. So that was something. Also, there's no spoilers here because it is in the synopsis that she starts a relationship with the ghost boy, so it's not a spoiler really, but I do have to say I think she falls in love way too quick. And yeah, everybody is just all like lovey-dovey super quick, and it's like, yo, you literally just met and only one of you is corporal currently. You guys need to, like, calm down. But yeah, I basically just want to know what kind of life she's been leaving when this, like, creepy paranormal dude, she runs into him and she's just like, yeah, you know, just another Wednesday in my world, really. And I'm like, really? I was just those couple of issues that made me kind of unable to make this be a complete 5-star read, because I just couldn't really move past them. But I did end up giving this 4 stars, and I will say, despite my issues with it, this is definitely worth a read. So the next book that I read was A Man Lay Dead, and this is by Niall Marsh. So this opens up with a young journalist who is invited by his cousin to his cousin's friend's manor house in the country. This man, his name is Sir Hubert Hansley, and he's like this uber rich dude, and he's regularly throws these weekend parties for close friends, and on this particular occasion he has decided, hey guys, we're all going to play the murder game. Well, unfortunately, at the end of the murder game, somebody ends up dead. So this is the first in Niall Marsh's Inspector Roderick Allen series. I really liked that another character was used to introduce Roderick Allen. I mean, that's used frequently in, I don't know so much as, like, mysteries now, but it was used frequently in, like, vintage mysteries, because, like, Sherlock Holmes, who introduces the character and tells the story, well, it's Watson. Same with the first appearance of Hercule Poirot. It was Captain Hastings who kind of introduced him in Mysterious Ferret Styles. So it's like, usually, I think that's something that was used a lot, because it gives you, like, hey, here's a normal day, and now the police have come, because a tragedy has taken place. So I do like that being used as an introduction to the detective character. However, this time I found Inspector Allen to be a particularly hard nut to crack used in this way. Like, I wasn't quite sure how to read him. At times he seemed kind of foolish and funny. At times he was almost stone cold. it was very hard to figure out, like, what he was doing, why he was doing it, his investigative methods, like, everything. It was just, in this case, it just seemed like it was a little bit more difficult to figure out what was going on, and he didn't really feel, he felt like a very confusing character, bouncing between, like, personality traits, basically, and it was very hard to read him. So, also, the mystery itself was kind of convoluted. There was a lot going on, and then randomly we also have this, like, subplot about a secretive Russian brotherhood. I'm not 100% certain about the Russian Brotherhood, but it sounded like, just from things that were talked about here, and like the names of it sounds like it was supposed to be the Bolsheviks that, like, this, like, secretive Russian Brotherhood was. So, I admittedly don't know a lot about Russian history. I know probably the bare minimum of Russian history in general. So I only have a very, very vague understanding of who and what the Bolsheviks were, are they still around? I don't know. So, yeah. I have to say, despite the fact that I don't really know that much about them, I highly doubt, like, I'm about 95 to 6% certain that they didn't have any, like, blood sacrificial rite stuff, creepy shit like that they did as part of the Brotherhood. I'm yeah, like I said, about 95 to 96% certain that was not actually a thing, and that means that Ngaio Marsh was just totally talking out her ass. So that's fun, I guess. But yeah, that was just a very weird thing to be in here, and it kind of, I mean, it definitely set it in the time period that it was in. But it was a weird thing, and it was like, it didn't really feel like, why was that part of this at all? But whatever. The method of murder itself really made me laugh. Like, it made me, that sounds terrible. You don't have the context for it. If you read this, you would understand. It made me laugh. But at the same time, when I thought about it more, it actually, when I was picturing it in my head, it gave me chills. So it made me laugh, but also creeped me the hell out, which is something if you can freak me out but amuse me at the same time. So, yeah. Overall, this was not a solid start for me to the world of Ngaio Marsh. However, I have now read another one of her volumes, and it has made me feel a little bit better because it was so much better than this. So, yeah. Anyway, I gave this 3 stars. Then I ended up doing it was more like finishing a reading, it's the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. It's like the Scots edition of the first book. I got this when it came out, whenever it came out. Was that like 2018 or something like that? I bought it back then because I am mildly obsessed with Scotland, and when I found out that there was a Scots edition of the book, I grabbed it. And then I want to say like early 2020, I started doing a read of it, and it was just taking me so long because I couldn't decipher some of the things unless I was reading it out loud to myself, which my Scots accent is probably quite atrocious, and I don't really want to do it for you because I don't want anyone to make fun of me or tell me that I have offended their whole countrymen. So But yeah, I basically had to like read it out loud to myself, and it took a while for me to do so. And it's been sitting on my nightstand of shame since like early 2020. I've been slowly making my way through it every now and again, and finally, like last month, I was like, screw it, this needs to go back on my shelf somewhere. I can't look at it anymore. And I finished off the last like 3 chapters. I mean, it's the first book. I already know pretty much what's going to happen in it, but I do have to say that, hey, they translated it into Scots, and that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I basically just finished that. And then the last couple of things I read were graphic novels, and those were, first up, a reread of The Adventure Zone Volume 1, Here There Be Gerblins, and then a read of Volume 2, Murder on the Rockport Limited. These are by Clint, Justin Travis, and Griffin McElroy, and they are illustrated by Carrie Peisch. So if you don't know, the McElroy brothers are podcasters, and they've been a part of like the podcast community, and also Justin and Griffin were part of that. They like, I think they helped co-found Polygon. They're like very much into the gaming community too and everything. But yeah, so they have major podcasters. They all have their own podcasts with like their wives and other people, and yeah, there's a lot going on. Their father, Clint, joined them on making The Adventure Zone, which is Justin, Travis, and their dad playing their own version of D&D, and Griffin is the DM for it. And along the way, they decided to make graphic novels of the podcast. So I got Here There Be Gerblins like a couple of years ago, I want to say, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's actually what got me into listening actually to Taz, because I'm a fan of like Mabam, My Brother and Me, which is their main like podcast, and I also listen to a couple of like their other ones that they do other people, and I'm like, I've not really played. I haven't really played a full campaign. I've played a couple of sessions of things, and I've been an NPC in a session, but I've never actually played like a full campaign. I'm not like a huge D&D person, so I wasn't really sure what to feel about it. But when I found out they had a graphic novel, I was like, okay, obviously I have to see what these goofballs are up to. And so I loved it, and it actually got me listening to the podcast, and I love the podcast. If you're a fan of D&D, I mean, you probably already know about it, but you should definitely give it a listen. Also, give Dungeons and Daddies a listen, because that is an amazing D&D podcast. It is not a BDSM podcast, except when randomly it ends up being one, but it is not normally. It just sounds like one, but it's a D&D podcast. So this is just great. It's hilarious. I love how all of the characters are drawn. I think it really gets the humor and the personality of the characters and everything. I think it really gets it across very well. This made me laugh out loud. So when I grabbed the second volume, I blew through it. I really like the art style. I think it's colorful. It's fantastical. The facial expressions on the characters are amazing. I think it really like helped flesh out things that we just hear on like the podcast. You can actually visually see it. It's hilarious. Like I said, I laughed out loud. I absolutely adored this. Thought it was so freaking funny. There's a lot of like just humorous things here and there. I did notice one thing in here that I think was potentially a reference to Monty Python, which also made me laugh really loud, because I'm like like 8% certain it was a reference to a Monty Python sketch, and it's one of my favorite Monty Python sketches. So I loved it. This one also, I really loved the murder mystery element to it. And I know that like two of the brothers are into like Poirot and stuff like that, so I'm sure that that was like, you know, that's like a big thing. But yeah, I think I might have liked this even better than this one, just because you get to like flesh out the characters a little more, and yeah, I mean, I like murder mysteries, and this is a murder mystery on a train, but it's like D&D, and yeah, I loved it, and it was great. And yeah, when I allow myself to buy books again, I'm gonna have to pick up their other volumes. I think they're out to, I think there's like number 5 has just come out or is coming out next year, so yeah. Oh, and I gave these both 5 stars. So yeah, that was everything that I read in November. Fairly enjoyable month overall. If you guys have read any of these, let me know what you thought as well. I hope that you guys are having a great weekend, wherever you're at. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe, please do so, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!